think the first one I remember when I was a kid was maybe 6 years old, the Mecca Arena in Milwaukee. And for whatever reason, I remember Larry Zbyszko versus Kurt Hennig. Whether that actually happened, I don't remember.
Right.
My uncle, but that's what I remember. And there was a story, and I still to this day don't know if it's a rib or not. I'm going to ask Dreamer again tomorrow. But both Dreamer and Carino have told me that they went to TV in Milwaukee, and on the lineup was Super Crazy versus me. And I wasn't there, and Paul's running around going, "Where's Adam Pearce? Where's Adam Pearce?" And nobody ever called me. Like, I was 19, 18, would have been there in a heartbeat and worked for nothing. CM Punk, Colt Cabana came through not too long after that.
Right.
Maybe in what you think. And he's never been shy about that, you know. If people think Punk's an asshole, it's probably because he was being an asshole. You know, that's just being transparent and being true to what you believe and what you think.
Yeah.
I really always respected that about him. In fact, I think he and I, in a lot of ways, are cut from that same kind of cloth. So I can see why some people, depending upon what side of the fence you fall with him, either you hate him, probably because he hates you, or vice versa.
Yeah.
You know, you love him because he loves you, or respect him is very much earned. You know, and he's stubborn. He's stubborn in that way. And if you fall onto, for whatever reason, on the wrong side of things with him, it takes a while to get to that other place, and vice versa. It's very. Bert liked my hair when I had hair, and I only worked for him a handful of times, just because Chicago to Nashville was like 9 hours.
Right.
And doing that for $20. Granted, it was TV, Music City Wrestling at the time, so it was cool. But like, I never felt like I got over with Bert in the way that I would have needed to get over with Bert to stay working down there. And you can read into that whatever you want to read into that. But I was I wasn't the Colorado kid.
Right.
You know what I mean? And nothing against Mike, but you know, he was the man, and we had similar looks. And I remember I got calls back on the same day from both of them, from JJ and from Terry Taylor. And I set up. I happened to speak to Terry first. We set up a tryout at the then Tracks, the original Tracks in Connecticut, to go. And I was supposed to go with the guy I mentioned earlier, Billy Joe Eaton. And then JJ called me back later in that day and said that he wanted me to come to Atlanta, and he was going to have Paul Orndorff call me. And then Paul Orndorff called me a couple hours later and was like, "No, you need to come here first. We have a much better. We can offer you way more." Like, I had no idea. I was just happy that Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff was calling me. You know what I mean? I was 19. On the Friday, I said, he goes, "I can't stand. I'm gonna leave." I go, "They treated you like complete fucking shit. You know, you're my friend. I'll go home with you. I'll leave. Fuck it. I don't care." And I left the contract on the table there too. Terry was pissed at me for years on that, you know. And the story he got was like, fucking these guys, they couldn't take it, blah, blah, blah. And I remember telling Terry, no, it's like, there's a fucking way to treat people. I said, number one, what the fuck's going on around here? Like, why are we in this flea bag with these roaches? And two, like, they're beating the shit out of my friend. Like, I can't stand by and handle this. What the fuck, I don't want to do as well. Samoa Joe, I remember seeing his first matches, you know, working for Rick. It's just a lot of people went through that place that you wouldn't think of. Frankie Kazarian, Nova went through there after ECW.
Yep.
Before he transitioned to an office role at WWE and doing the Simon Dean thing. Like, practically everybody. So where I met Percy Pringle for the first time too. Again, I remember standing downtown Los Angeles with an entire roster full of guys, and I remember the main event he had promised was Super Dragon versus American Dragon versus Ultimo Dragon, and all three of those guys standing in the middle of the street outside of this venue that had never been booked to begin with, and Gary hiding in his car because he had 20 guys wanting to kick the shit out of him for basically making a mockery of you know, pro wrestling. And Aaron's hand or whatever. They see the beer in Joe Schmo's hand. "You're drinking in the car?" Fucking AK-47s drawn on them. "You're going to pay. You're going to pay." They pull us out of the fucking car. They took him like around the back of the car. They've got their, literally, if you imagine it, like it's a scene from a movie.
Yeah.
They got AK-47s on him. You know what I mean? And we're on the other side behind him. He can't see. We're all fucking laughing, but still drinking, by the way.
Right.
Like, and he's like, I didn't know. And he's emptying his pockets. He don't have any. It was a four-way. Me, Samoa Joe, BJ Whitmer, and I want to say Jimmy Rave, and I could be wrong on. I know Joe was in the match, and I'm pretty sure BJ was. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, it was fun. You know, I would try to stay close to him just because I respected him from watching the Midnights and the Rock and Rolls on TV when I was young, you know, and then obviously you could see that he was in a position of power in WWF at that point as an agent, or I don't even know if that was what his title was, but like he seemed to have TV formats and stuff on him at all the time, and people were going to him and asking questions. So I figured, you know, I respect Jimmy Cornette just what I've seen on TV, but here we now at the show, you know what I mean, and people are going to him because it wasn't something that somebody put down on paper and said, we want to do this, 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 and this. You know, if I remember right, that started as a one-off between Hero and Bryan Danielson and morphed into, you know, what ended up being, for my money, it's certainly one of the greatest feuds in Ring of Honor history.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about it, I think it could have been a lot more than it was. It had CZW kind of stepped up in terms of putting emphasis on it. And granted, CZW ran in Philly, and ostensibly that was their place, and they did their part in Philly. But ROH was it was really putting CZW over in all these other towns too, Boston, Chicago, you know, and there was nothing goofy about it. I don't remember the chair hitting me. I don't remember any pain. I just remember the chair hitting me selling against the guardrail, and Necro going, oh shit. And then I feel like this fucking waterfall of blood just all over me. I have no idea to this day. I still have the scar. I mean, you can see that on the camera. My hair's growing.
Oh, yeah.
But like, yeah, you know. And he certainly had friends. Chris Hero was real tight with him and other people.
Jimmy.
But, yeah. But I miss him. I miss him every day. I was the one in the office. When I say the office, I was in San Diego, but in the Ring of Honor office, I got the call when he had passed, and that was one of the hardest days, probably the hardest thing I ever had to deal with in that position at Ring of Honor, was to, number one, tell Kerry, and then you know, be kind of the point person for all the boys who felt about him the way I did. We loved him, you know. We felt terrible for the things he was going through, and it was particularly sad for me knowing that, number one, I couldn't help him gain control over his situation because he didn't know how to gain control over it. I had to fire him. I fired him in Houston. Like, terrible. You know, just terrible. I miss him every day. He was amazing. That was cost cutting. And you know what, to Gabe's credit, like, if we had done the CZW thing, we did the thing with Brent, I don't know what there was left for me to do as a talent in Ring of Honor. I was never going to go out there in the top 2 or 3 matches on the card and work the way that those guys worked. That just, number one, wasn't my strength, and two, I wasn't willing to kill myself. Yeah, it was the next logical step for me in the wrestling business. And two, Gabe and I didn't have that kind of relationship where I would look at it and go, if I don't call him and tell him this, then I'm a shitty human being. It's not like we were friends necessarily. Not that that's good, bad, or indifferent, but it just wasn't a situation where I felt obligated that I should call this guy and tell him, hey man, these guys are going to fire you. It wasn't really my business. I just knew that I was the next guy in, if that makes any sense. That's not to speak to, you know, his shadiness or otherwise. That's just saying, you know, you get a read on somebody and you either like this guy or you don't like this guy, and most of the time I didn't like this guy. And I know he didn't like me most of the time either, probably because I saw he was full of shit half the time. Not that I was trying to get myself over with the boys, because I didn't care about that, but what I wanted to do, it was send them a clear and distinct message that I am not going to be like every other wrestler who's a booker and push myself. In fact, I'm going to go completely 180 and not even work.
Right.
I was doing a lot of NWA bookings at that point. It wasn't like I was hurting for in-ring work, because I think the other side of that coin is anything that I wanted to do, I made sure to include Kerry in on the decision, because I knew that previous to me there wasn't a lot of that. And I think Gabe even alludes to that, like he was the Iron Fist and what I wanted was happening, that kind of thing. And I didn't want to be that. You know, I figured this man's writing the checks. Right. It's his wallet solely that's funding this entire thing. I think the least he deserves is input in this. So I didn't really make decisions that he didn't okay. Like if I went to him and said, I want to do this, and he farted on it, I probably wouldn't have done it. I didn't have a whole... It was funny to see how very similar our opinions, he and I, are. Of some of the things that happened on his watch and in mine, and how similar they were. And you know, and I said when I left, oil and water don't mix. You know, a liar and a thief is a liar and a thief, and I don't give a shit who's observing it. You know, I just had a real problem with everything that was Ring of Honor other than the wrestling. I just seen it forever, so I grabbed the DVD and I kind of held it up and pointed to it like, I'm gonna take this. And he held his finger up, like, wait. I said, okay. I was new, and I didn't know him. So he finishes that shit, whatever. I come to DV, and I go, Gabe told me to tell you this is okay for me to have this. And he goes, that's $25. And I said, no. Gabe said for me to tell you, like, it's okay. And he goes, I don't care what Gabe told you. I'm telling you it's $25. And I was like, okay. I said, well, how about if I come over to that fucking table and take the $25 out of your ass? And he kind of...
I wish I was there.
Like, I would call the office, and I would hear Sid baiting Ross to fucking talk shit to me over the phone from 3,000 miles away. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, Ross went to Sinclair HR and filed a workplace... what the fuck was it when I got the email? It was... not workplace violence, but basically that's what it was.
Right.
I'm not a fucking employee. I'm not an employee of Sinclair Broadcasting. So how can you file an HR complaint against somebody who's not an employee? Adam threatened me. At least he was telling the truth that time, because I threatened that son of a bitch many times. And Carrie would always have to pull me aside. Be the better man. Turn the cheek. You're better than him. Blah, blah,
Carrie
blah.
didn't like him either.
No one liked him.
Yeah, no, I know.
Nobody liked him. And here's the thing. I pity him because I don't think he liked himself. And I haven't spoken to him. It's been, God, 4 years now since I've actually spoken to the man. And I wish him, if you're watching this, I don't know if he even cares about the business. I hope you are happy. I hope you found a place in your heart that you can be content with, because Lord knows the sir shit wasn't a Ring of Honor. Okay. So I was supposed to do that, didn't go through. The organization previous to all this legal mumbo jumbo and the shit that ended up happening with him taking over control of the company. And I was resolved at that point that I was going to be done with it anyway, having absolutely nothing to do with him or how things ended with lawsuits and Marquez and whatever. My loyalty was to what I was doing and to Colt Cabana, and when they weren't going to be on board with kind of taking care of him, we both walked together, and that's not an indictment of anybody personally. That's just somebody taking a stand. That might be my second favorite crowd to work in front of, the JCW crowd, because it's just a rowdy bunch of insanity happening. And here's me, or here's Colt, and then I kind of rode those coattails when they booked me for that year as I was U.S. Marshal out of Pearce. We're playing cops. We look like two fucking stripper cops, basically, wearing these horrible uniforms and just having the times of our life. It was great.
In March of 2013,
maybe age in a match or two and kind of try out in that regard. And then we had the gut check match, and it seemed like all of a sudden I was over with their entire fan base, at least those that use the internet, and then it went nowhere.
Why is that?
I don't know. I made my pitch to Bruce Pritchard because it was like, and I look at it the same way I did when I was 17 in St. Paul, Minnesota, and Nick Bockwinkel's on the card offering his insight and wisdom. And granted, I'm no Nick Bockwinkel and never will be, but I almost look at it the same way. It was him kind of doing his due diligence and paying back the business that had taken care of him for all those years. And when WWE says, hey, come down here and provide your perspective to these people who may have otherwise never get it, I look at it as an obligation to say, this business has done well for me, and in return I'm going to do what I can for it, because wrestling doesn't owe me a goddamn thing, you know what I mean? I feel, even after all these years now, that the life I have, I owe it, and I probably always will.